This is Remote Ruby.
Have you any remote idea to the meaning of the word?
Up, dog.
Sup, dog?
Bringing it back.
Hey.
All right. This has been Ruby.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Best episode yet.
It's a weird week. I'm taking tomorrow off. I'm just exhausted. I haven't sleeping at all. So
Yeah.
How come?
Why not?
I don't know. Every time I think I know what causes something in my life, I cut that thing out and then it still happens. So for a while I thought, if I have a drink at night, I don't sleep well. Stop drinking at night. So for a couple of days slept well, then it started happening again. So I don't know. Could be my medicine. Could be sugar. Could be.
I know something that helps me sleep at night.
What is that, Andrew?
Melatonin.
Yeah.
That's what I take.
Melatonin actually gives me bad dreams.
Does it? I start having bad dreams when I stop taking my nighttime medicine.
Your cough syrup.
Yeah, basically. They won't let me in Walgreens anymore because apparently you're only supposed to buy 3 NyQuil at a time. And I was like, why? I don't take NyQuil. I should clarify.
Shannon had a cold last week. She was taking NyQuil and she didn't like the taste of it. I don't like the taste of NyQuil maybe, but I also love it because I know I'm going to sleep if I take it. So
yeah, but it makes you feel like goopy in the morning.
I feel like everything makes me feel goopy in the morning.
Something for that too.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, boy.
I can't keep going. This is going to the dark side. Going to the dark. No, it's a weird week, though. It's also weird that when this episode airs, it'll be like January of 2023, it feels like, because we're like very ahead for once.
Yeah.
It's not
I just queued up the last episode and we've got another one being edited. So it's 3 weeks ahead right now. Wild. But we're also recording on Thursday. So tomorrow, when we normally would have recorded, we'd only be 2 weeks ahead. So
well, look it up.
It's a rounding problem.
Heard about those.
Yeah.
I feel like there's nothing like major in Ruby or Rails last week, really. I have things I can talk about because I've been deploying an app on Hatchbox, the new version. And so I can ask you all my questions.
Real quick, I was going to say, I saw DHH was going to release the release candidate of Turbo 7.2. So there's things coming. That has a regression that the beta or whatever, beta 2, just like, no, it was like the delete or whatever wouldn't actually, it was the confirms, I think it was. I've already forgotten. It was a couple days ago, but I was running the beta of it and it just didn't handle something properly. So there's like a hot fix that Marcelo could have released for and just need to like run that temporarily until the RC is out. But there's a lot of things happening there, which is awesome to see. So David's been merging some stuff and Sean's been doing all his PRs and lots of good stuff happening for all these different little things and turbo frames and like stream actions now are exposed. So you can build your own custom morph action and anything you want now, which is awesome. That was one of the very first things I asked DHH about back when Turbo came out, like the first week. And he was like, no. And I was like, okay. And I'm glad to see it here finally. So it's nice that he changed his mind on it because now it opens the possibility of your back end can trigger literally anything to happen on the front end. You just wire it up yourself, which is sweet. Oh, that's what it was. A remove. If you delete something and broadcast a remove, it doesn't need a template inside of it, but there's a change in Turbo that like always asked for the template inside of the Turbo stream, which meant that the removes would blow up because it didn't have one. So that was the little regression that got fixed as well. That's what it was, but I'm excited to see that. He was talking about RC coming out this week.
When you say 7.2, do you mean 7.2 or 7.02?
7.2, I believe, right?
So are they not keeping up with the Rails versioning then?
No,
I don't think they ever were.
It's totally separate. Yeah.
I guess I just got confused because it came out at the same time as Rails 7.
What's like technically TurboLink 6 is what we were using prior to switching to this stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and like 7.1 is the current stable version of Turbo anyways. So
Yeah,
it's already ahead of Rails.
I had to pin Turbo to a ref the other day because we tried to upgrade it, or I upgraded it to get this functionality working because it wasn't working on whatever version we were on. And then I was like, cool, the update works. Perfect. And so I hit that big splashy green merge button, and then Heroku failed because of an uglifier error. And I was like, why is this a thing? And I did the old GitHub search, and someone was like, yeah, just pin this ref. So I just pinned that ref and moved on. I didn't feel good about it. I asked Andrea. She was like, cool with it. She was like, do it because I can't ship to production. So what are you waiting for?
Yeah, it'll be nice when the RC's out because I think a lot of these things will be all fixed up nicely. But yeah, it's good to see some activity on it. Lots of little things here and there. So that's always good. And I think the PRs have slowly shrunk down. Heck, there's Marco, Sean. In the past week, there's still 7 or more like open PRs. You know, recent little fixes and improvements here and there. So it's nice to see active progress on it, and then things get merged, and hopefully it doesn't go by the wayside for too much longer and stays with momentum.
Is active progress a new Rails framework?
Could be. Active Turbo.
I'm trying to find it. I'm trying.
Action Turbo.
I knew Marco was working on it because when I met up with him in Phoenix not long ago, and he mentioned that, I was like, oh, that's dope. Hold on, I need to run back to my house for my feature list request. Bet.
Oh, something that is cool that I saw. Crunchy Data released a WASM compiled version of Postgres that runs in the browser. So you can learn. Chris is squinting. I came up with an awesome WASM.
Turbo WASM.
What a software miracle. That's what I have.
That is what it stands for. Yeah.
My question is, if we can do Postgres in the browser now, why do we need to build these complex forms and tables?
We literally just have to use React now for everything.
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe we should explain what it is before Andrew sends a whole slew of people into. I feel like you might be like a cult leader. So like, I feel like, I feel like, if you, like unintentionally, I feel like you have so much charisma that people just follow you. So I'm concerned that by you saying, why do we need to build forms and we can run Postgres in the browser, that there's going to be like a huge popular article on Hacker News after this airs about how forms are dead.
Well, you know what? I'm going to take that as a compliment.
We'll just air this while we're on the show too. So we always joke about how you compliment, you like try to give me a compliment one time. And I took it personally, like you were like, oh, wow, you've improved in this area. And I was like, ouch. So I was really bad at it before. I realized I did it to Shannon the other night. So now I've got to work on that in therapy. It's going to be great.
Thank God. It was really affecting our relationship.
I could tell.
Yeah. And I got roasted for it on Slack the other day.
Did you?
Yeah. Remember I was like, oh, I tried to compliment Spencer.
Oh, that's right. He wasn't. Yeah.
Once again, it was like, I can't tell if this is an insult or I'm like, oh, if it was a compliment. I don't know. Maybe that's a me thing.
Yeah. Maybe this isn't me.
Hold on.
Maybe what I'm experiencing.
Hold on.
Is now I question everything because I hang out with you.
Hey, if I'm trying to insult you, you'll know it.
Jeez. Okay, so I'm pretty sure this Postgres thing is, I haven't even used it yet, but I think it's an easy way for you to like hop in and learn how to use Postgres. Like it's some of the advanced features of Postgres.
Oh, yeah. I did see that now that you mention it, because it was like named Learn Postgres or something in the browser, right? Yeah. So it's not intended to be a local storage use case thing. It's like, here it's easy to play with. Testing Ruby in the browser, like,
right?
Yeah, you can, but like you're not going to build probably a production thing with this.
Right. It's all about.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, I don't know what local Postgres in the browser would do for me. Do you sync all the backend data to the browser client side for the current account or something?
I got it.
Interesting.
I got it. You spin up a headless Chrome on a Linux server, run Postgres, expose that, and that's how you connect to it. And
What if
All right,
we?
so when are we making our
So
LLC?
here's
you won't pay to make our, what are they called?
I don't know. I pay a lot of things.
You wouldn't pay for gas, whatever that meant. Our NFTs.
Oh, that was
Okay.
expensive.
Yeah, you're going to pay to form an LLC?
Someone told me that cost $20.
Well, I mean, maybe some places. It might cost me
There you
at
go.
least a few $100.
Man, that's a bummer.
And apparently it costs to dissolve an LLC, I recently learned, because I'm trying
costs
to.
money to lose money.
Yeah. I'm just hearing everything. So I used to have a thing called Hope Grid and got a tax bill from Delaware. And I was like, oh, no, I'm going to dissolve that. Didn't pay it. Got a $200 penalty for not paying it on time. Was like, oh, let me go dissolve it. They were like, you got to pay taxes before you dissolve it. And you got to pay the state of Delaware $200.
Wow.
So it's like straight up, you're crossing around the board on Monopoly there.
It's yes, it is.
yeah.
I mean, it's my own fault for not understanding how any of this works. Maybe I should never start a business again, but
Well,
Yeah.
now I'm not going to start mine. So thank you for this warning because I don't want to have to do that. Because guess who would not have paid that $200 fine?
Yep.
And
Yep.
eventually it would have become thousands. And that would have been the summation of my life.
And then pretty soon after the FBI searches your house, and
They can
You know?
find me.
then you're in the news.
Hey, at least I'll be in the news again. Let's go.
There you
again,
go.
I've been on the news before.
let's go. Come on.
I was interviewed as a lifeguard when I was in high school. Okay, you know what? And the story ends right there. I'm not going to tell you the rest
I don't want to hear the rest. That's why I've been
Good. because there wasn't much more to it.
All right. So Postgres. This is a perfect segue into questions I have about Hatchbox.
While you were talking about Postgres, though, you said something about headless Chrome, and I would like you to port headless Chrome to WASM so we can run headless Chrome inside of Chrome. How's that?
But
And then
for
you've
the
got-
sophisticated. We run
And then-
we run headless Chrome in Safari.
And then you've
It'll
got
get blocked.
Postgres. You got Postgres running, so you can run your tests in the browser in headless Chrome on Postgres in the browser
So they
You
can
should
take
put-
even longer.
on your Chromebook.
We should put RSpec in the browser because
Ooh.
you know
Oh.
what wouldn't be frustrating? Trying to debug RSpec tests in a browser.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Get on that.
That
When are they
reminded
gonna
me
build
of
built-in CI?
it reminded me of us the other day talking about changing my license plates on my Mini Cooper to test, so it says effectively mini test. Just too perfect.
Hey, that's good. I like that.
Nobody will get it, but we will.
I should probably update my license plate.
So this is
Just don't pay it like your corporate taxes.
I haven't paid for the license plate ever.
are you still on your Carolina tags?
Not only am I still on my Carolina tags, I still have a temporary sticker on it.
Oh, people do that in St. Louis. There's Reddit St. Louis always has pictures of people trying to find the oldest temporary
Drive out
tags.
tags? Dude, we have
So-
that problem here. And they're on cars that are like beat to hell. There's no way you just bought that car.
Shoot, I think I saw somebody from I know 2015 was one of the ones that I've seen that they're still driving with temp tags that were issued in 2015. And I know there's been older ones too. So I think you can get away with it. Yeah.
Do you think they do customized tags for cars like in Europe?
They do. Yeah, I think so.
Because what I'm thinking about is this is my pure ignorance, but in the States, at least in Tennessee, I think we're limited to 6 or 7 characters max. I think you said it's 6 in Missouri.
In Missouri. Yeah, that's what it said. Which is
Right.
really short.
Yeah, that is really short. 8's not much better, but it is better.
I can barely put SQL injection in my license plate.
Barely. You can try and drop the red light cameras.
Yeah.
Nice. Please.
Yeah. Public service. You're welcome.
Because if I wanted to get an Andrew M. Codes license plate, I think Europe would be the only place that I might be able to do that. Get one that long.
Well, good thing for y'all, I can get Jason on my license plate, no problem. Maybe that's the actual motivation I need to go to the DMV.
If you get Jason as your tax, I will pay for your 1 year, not a lifetime deal. I also still owe you $163. I started.
Wait, what?
This episode is amazing. I started Venmoing you $1 a day for your rail.
I saw that.
But I stopped. I forgot when I went on.
Oh, is that what that was? I was like, why
Manual.
sending me $1 per day?
So you wouldn't pay the gas fees.
Oh,
I sent Chris his portion of that. I started sending you $1 a day, but I have to like 3 weeks, so I got to get on that.
if you
I
never
hope
mentioned that, that
If
would
you're losing 2.9% and 30 cents of every dollar.
It's Venmo, so Venmo's probably losing 2.9%.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
Can we talk about Hatchbox now?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a bad idea.
Better give me that money though. We're gonna have people. You're gonna have. Never mind. Cut
You'll
that
see the
out.
rest of it. You'll see the rest of it in 130 some days.
I need this as
Evidence.
yeah.
Oh, crap. All right. Anyway, Hatchbox. Great platform, by the way.
Oh yeah. Name 7 things you've launched on it.
I launched the original Rebase.fm app on it. I've launched at least 6 side projects on it.
Oh, okay. That's easy to say.
I released one thing and 6 at least.
No,
That's 7, right?
shipped several things on it, but none of them exist today.
Yeah.
But I always
Yeah, I just updated the DNS yesterday to point to the new version. So it is sort of officially launched by the time that this airs. It will definitely be officially launched. Everybody gets like a 14-day free trial automatically. So I've got 14 days to go start that meter billing and get that finished up.
That's the 37 Signals way. They talk about that in Getting Real. When they launched Basecamp, they didn't have any billing because they're like, well, we got 30 days to figure it out.
Yeah. If only they had to pay Jim.
If only.
But yeah, I mean, that was same philosophy there because I very clearly remember that and thinking like, oh, that's really smart. It also gives you like, if you need motivation, you have a deadline that's a real deadline, not like some made up deadline that you give yourself because you think you need a deadline for running your startup or whatever because you have no boss. So it's nice to have those sometimes. But yeah, so you're using the new version.
I'm using the new version. You gave me the link to it before you launched it. And I thought, yeah, why not? Like, I like to live on the edge. And so I launched with it. So I guess we haven't really talked about it. So I'm working on Jobboardly still. I think we talked about it a little bit. So that's a project Chris started. We worked on together for a little bit. Now I'm working on. And so it was time to stand it up. And so what I did, I have a cluster. Is that the correct term?
Yes.
I have a single cluster of servers.
Yes.
So I like a Jobboardly cluster.
So and like the confusing thing that you could spin up servers and like this is how Laravel Forge works. You just spin up servers and you can install Postgres on one. We just gave it a concept of a cluster so that inside there you can have all the servers associated and it can know like which ones are doing web server work so it can plug those IPs in the load balancer and you don't have to manage it. It'll do it for you. We have Postgres in there so we know what IP address to use. We'll use the private IP so that traffic doesn't go to the internet and back. It'll just run in the data center and whatnot. So it's nice to have like the cluster concept, but I know a lot of people are like, what the hell is this? I just want to add a server.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, because I think the main confusion is, what do? I want staging and production. Well, you would create 2 separate clusters because if you run 2 apps on the same cluster, then they're evenly distributed the same way. So you would literally be running staging on your production servers, which isn't what you want.
Right.
You would want a separate cluster. And also you want that because you can scale it separately and deal with it separately. So you want 2 separate clusters, but it's not maybe the most clear thing or people just don't seem to understand the concept of it as much. But I think it's becoming more normal because you hear about Kubernetes clusters and yada, yada, yada. But
I've heard about the old K8. So maybe you can tell me if I did this right or not. So I started a cluster and
nope, wrong.
Damn it. All right. Well, gonna duck and go back to Heroku. No, Heroku's a whole nother conversation. So I spun up a cluster and I have a server and I didn't do worker on it. I just did web server and cron. And I created a separate server for worker, but they're both in the same cluster. Is that what I want to do?
Yes.
Okay.
What you're going to accomplish there is that you will have a server that only runs background jobs, which is great for scaling up stuff if you have a lot of them and running it independently of your web server and whatever. It's flexible that way. So you can have multiple worker servers, and then you just say, I want to deploy Sidekick to all of the worker servers. So it's really just like a tag. And then we look at that and say, like, you have these 3 web servers, so we'll plug all 3 of those into the load balancer if you have one. And web and background servers are going to need the code deployed to it. But if you chose to put Postgres on its own server, I'm not going to deploy the app code to it. It doesn't need to be there, so we don't do that. So it helps us when we deploy your code, like determine where it goes and whatever.
Cool.
So yes.
So I'm trying not to like, obviously this is like every side project I've done where I'm not trying to get ahead of myself. There's very real possibility this thing doesn't pan out long term. But at the same time, I also don't want to like have to go pull Postgres out, and run it on its own somewhere, or like pull out, like if I need to scale the web and workers differently. So I thought it's not a huge investment. They're just 2 droplets on DigitalOcean, and I don't need a ton of them, so they can run side by side. What I did do started with a Postgres server in the cluster, an unmanaged one. So here, like unmanaged meaning like you install Postgres on a droplet or on a server and you like configure it, but ultimately then I would be responsible like for maintaining it, things like that, right?
Yeah. So like any of those admin kind of things that you might need to do to it are just up to you. Like we're not going to configure replicas and other things like that for you, but that's something that like DigitalOcean or Amazon are really good at. We'll let them do that. You can pay them. They'll do a better job and do it cheaper than we would for you anyways. So the unmanaged database is just what you would expect if you're like, okay, cool. I got one server. I want to keep it cheap, run Postgres on the same server, run my workers there, whatever. Then like, it's perfect. Like if you're not going to have a massive database, like the GoRails database is like users, forum posts, and 400 some episodes. So it's like a very small database. And I don't need to go and pay for a managed database and replicas and point in time recovery and whatnot. Like it's a good use case for staging or whatever.
Right.
Production, you would probably want a managed database, but yeah.
So I ended up actually switching to a DigitalOcean managed database, kind of by accident. So like in Hatchbox, when I went to servers or databases, I created a new database cluster, kind of not realizing it would generate one on DigitalOcean. And when it did, I was like, oh, that's actually really cool and exactly what I want. So I ended up killing the server.
Yeah,
because the
Postgres
unmanaged one. Yeah, because it's $15 for their like entry level. So it's a little more than necessarily like a side project I want to pay right now. But it is really nice because like there's a UI for limiting access. So like only from these IPs, because my droplets are also hosted, because my servers, my web servers and workers are also hosted on DigitalOcean, I can just like select them as a drop down. And so no other IP address can access that. That kind of stuff's kind of cool. And I just updated it from like 11 to 14 from a drop down.
That's the really nice stuff. The upgrades are really valuable to have. We will set up the UFW firewall so that only servers in your cluster can access that. And that's why, like, if you want to actually connect to Postgres from your machine, what you would do is use like Table Plus and tunnel through SSH to get into the cluster like a VPN, and then you can talk to Postgres. So like we lock it down as well. But it is nice. Like DigitalOcean is going to give you an SSL wrapper around the Postgres connection. So you could just go straight to it and access it from anywhere if you want as well. But like we just keep it private in your cluster and don't make it publicly available.
Whether US East 1 is down or you forgot to add a configuration file, everyone has an outage from time to time. When your next outage occurs, transparency is critical. The difference between a minor annoyance that people soon forget and a fiasco that creates sustained resentment is in how you communicate. That's why you need Honeybadger. Honeybadger will be a crucial component of your incident response plan with their uptime monitoring service that now has an exciting new feature, public status pages. Create a new status page with custom domains, branding, and more. Don't let Twitter be the only way your users can find out if your app is down. Sign up for Honey Badger to improve your instant response with a shiny new status page that you will be proud to show your users. Visit honeybadger.io and start giving your users a better experience today and let them know Remote Ruby sent you. Thanks to Honey Badger for their continued support of Remote Ruby.
This is a question I have. You can set up a Postgres server in Hatchbox and it will provision it for you. When you choose background job, does it provision Redis for you?
No, because Redis is just like Postgres, a service you install. So you would just tag the server with Postgres, Redis, MySQL. Those are the main databases we have right now. So that
maybe I just missed it then because I went to spin up another one. It
should be at the bottom of the list.
There it is. Yep, I just missed it. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
So
I spun up a DigitalOcean Redis, managed Redis database.
Yeah. What we'll do is when you tag those, we'll create a database cluster for you automatically. That's like a local unmanaged one. So when you go to the database cluster section and you like create a new one, it's going to always be a managed one. Otherwise, you need to actually go to cluster itself, tell one of the servers, this is your job now, and it'll deal with it and run Redis or whatever. But yeah, like not every background job is going to run on Redis.
Right.
So we wouldn't tie that to it. But this is funny because one of the intuitive decisions at the time when I was building the original Hatchbox was like, you're creating your app. Do you want a database with it? And that was all part of the like creation step. But a lot of times people would be like, yeah, I wanted a database and I forgot to check the box or whatever. And we had no good way of adding that step back in later. So now the new one's got the ability to just create databases, as many as you want, and then attach them to multiple applications. And it's a very similar process to Heroku, which is like spin up your Heroku Postgres, make as many as you want, connect them to whatever apps you want. They're kind of separate from your dynos. And that's the same thing in the new Hatchbox, which is nice. It's much easier to manage.
I love that. So had I found that earlier, I would have just spun up an unmanaged Redis. But then I learned also that DigitalOcean has a managed Redis. And again, it was fine. But then I start like teetering on a little more than I want to spend because then I'm at like $30 for Redis and Postgres, which again, for an app that makes money, that's great.
Yeah. Hopefully you're making money and then it isn't a problem pretty soon. But yeah, you know, those are things too that are pretty easy. You're not going to have a large database. So if you want to, I just have people recommend them like just run it unmanaged. And then when you're at that point, when you're ready to, and you're making money, then just migrate it. It'll be a short amount of downtime, put it in maintenance mode, dump the database, import it on the other one, change the database URL and you're done. So it's pretty quick to switch over. But I was going to say, I think if I remember right, the cheapest DigitalOcean, Postgres, and Redis don't allow replicas. You have to be like on the second one or higher, which is like starting at $30 a month plus another $15 a month for the replica or whatever. It gets you pretty fast in cost there to have that redundancy, which makes sense. But it's also like, yeah, now you're in Heroku territory cost wise and stuff really fast. But, you know, for production, it's good. But like for most of our customers are hobby and small business and stuff. That is a lot when you're trying to build a new business or keep your costs down or whatever. Maybe you're, you know, a lot of agencies that are building lots of projects for clients. If those don't get heavy traffic, then Hatchbox is great because you can spin up one big server, just pay for that. That's $80 a month and run 20 Rails apps on it or something and just pay for the single server instead. And you're not getting nickel and dimed for every database for every single one of those. And that would add up a lot. And it's a good way to save money through Hatchbox. And we just give you the sort of, you know, I went through the rabbit hole of compiling every single Ruby version on Ubuntu Jammy. And those are a real pain in the butt because I think it's like Ruby 3.1's like the only one that compiles with OpenSSL 3. And that's the only thing they ship with. So literally like even Ruby 3, you think it's new enough that it would work, but I had to go compile OpenSSL myself and then tell ASDF to compile it and all of that. And then we go and cache all that and make it so that when you deploy with us, we just download OpenSSL and Ruby and you have a working version in 2 seconds. You don't have to figure out any of those steps. And that's the stuff that saved me a lot of time from maintaining my own servers. These weird nuances of little or like we're using the official Redis repo, and like that has protected mode, which means you can't access it from any other machines. So like we go ahead and configure it properly and set a password and everything so you can use it from another machine. But out of the box, you got to go like learn the hard way that it's configured more secure by default now, which is good. But now you got to go learn, what is protected mode? How do I turn it off? What do I have to do? How do I change the configs? And then you'll do that today and you'll spin up another server in 6 months and completely forget all of those steps. So it is nice to have the automation that we've done for all of those little tidbits here and there.
It'd be easy for me to blow smoke. We're friends. We're on a podcast right now. But like, I legit have had fun like spinning this app up. It's been fun. There's just some things I haven't done in a while when it comes to like setting up servers, because I've just, for the last few years, I haven't launched a ton of things. And when I do, I've just been like Herokuing them.
Yeah. And this is one where like Heroku will cost you $100 pretty fast. It's a good place to start on Hatchbox. It may not be the forever host for your service, but that's okay. If we can help you get started and whatever for cheap, then great.
The other thing I did, since now I'm apparently just a DigitalOcean influencer, is I also set up a space for active storage.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, because it's S3 compatible, and they have an article on DigitalOcean about how to set it up. And I'm just adding on costs here, but it's like $5 a month, but it took me like 10 minutes to spin up. But it's great.
It's kind of interesting that they have like a $5 floor as opposed to like just pay for pure usage. It's like a minimum of $5 plus. And then you could use AWS or S3 and it's just whatever you actually use. And I always thought that was kind of strange.
AWS comes at the cost of your sanity if you don't know how to set up AWS. And so like there's honestly not a time I think I've set up S3 with active storage that it hasn't taken like 40 minutes because I don't have the right core settings or the right permissions and things like that. And literally DigitalOcean was so fast. Like I don't mind paying $5 because I've already forgotten about it.
Yeah. Yeah, they had a little bit of, I think it's a lot better now, but they did have some performance issues and stuff in the early days. I had used it from the beta or something because I had in my DigitalOcean account several buckets that I could not delete that said they were created like 49 years ago. So they were like established before obviously some changes on the back end. And they were like, you couldn't view them, you couldn't delete them, you couldn't do anything with it. And I eventually like hit up support and I was like, hey, I think there's a bug here. And they took care of it. It's been interesting to see because they're trying to be fully S3 compatible and all the protocol stuff is the same. And I'm sure there's lots of little nuances to mirroring that and whatever. And it's a big project of infinite scaling storage, basically. And
right.
That's pretty cool. But yeah,
it is nice that DigitalOcean has evolved to those types of offerings.
Yeah.
Because like, I know you're tightly integrated with it. I think that's part of why I've enjoyed it so much too. I know it's easy to set up unmanaged Postgres and unmanaged like Redis and stuff through Hatchbox. It's also really easy to set up the managed one because like your app actually talks to the APIs. Like when I created a database cluster, it actually like for both Redis and Postgres, it created it on DigitalOcean.
Yeah.
But it's also worth, I guess, a little bit of money right now to not have to think about it anymore either. It's just there. Redis might be the thing I might move back to being unmanaged.
I think Redis is an easy one to not pay for the managed stuff. Usually you're using it for Sidekick or something, and it's like you're not heavily taxing your Redis instances. It may be if you're using it for actual compute and stuff, then it's much more important. I think that's a good one. I need to get back in there and add memcached in as an option because you can configure Redis for caching, but if you do that, you actually want Redis to delete keys that are old when it fills up. Otherwise, you'll just start getting errors, and that's bad. But you definitely don't want to use that configuration with background jobs because you don't want to just delete jobs when you're out of RAM or whatever. So that's bad. And that's one of those things that's like not actually as easy to set up because of the way Linux works. You like install Redis, but you have the Redis configs and everything in a specific spot. And it's not that easy to spin up two Redises, one with one config and one with the other. You'd have to kind of go and copy paste all these files to do that. And so like that may be a good situation if you ever wanted that, where it's like, I need two Redises, then like use the managed ones. I don't know actually if DigitalOcean lets you change that configuration to delete old keys yet.
You can. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I knew that wasn't like originally a thing, and then they were going to add it.
I'm glad you mentioned this, because what I did when I set it up, since it was 4 background jobs, I did no eviction. It's the eviction policy, but they have 5 other options you can choose from. In the GUI and that kind of stuff, I don't know. That's the kind of stuff as a developer, I pay for that experience where I can just click a button. I like that.
Yeah. You want to work on your product, not do the DevOps stuff and everything. It is cool. They just released functions. So they've got their Lambda equivalent, which is pretty cool. So if anybody feels like making the Laravel Vapor clone of for Rails, which we have some things like Jets and Lamby or whatever, but I've never used them, and they're not official things like Laravel Vapor is. So adoption on that is much slower, but it's cool.
Yeah.
I don't think I've played with that stuff for quite some time, but I wanted to look into it. And I know like Taylor had talked about actually changing the internals of Laravel to support Vapor.
Right.
And I don't see that happening in Rails.
You don't?
I'd love to, but I bet it's very tough. But I don't know. Maybe it's not that bad.
I mean, I get it.
Going back to Hatchbox, I was thinking about, so Jobboardly, one of the things that Jobboardly has to deal with is like a subdomain for every customer, which we are now using Caddy, which automatically will register SSL certificates with Let's Encrypt, which is super cool because it does it during the request and you don't have to, this is one of the most frustrating things. We had used the official Let's Encrypt certbot using their official instructions to install it from the Ubuntu package originally. And that would then go get a certificate. We'd have to temporarily change Nginx to respond to that, get the certificate, then edit Nginx's config again using the certificate now. And that would cause like downtime when you reload Nginx or like temporary reloading and stuff to do that. And the other situation we kind of had there was the Nginx configs load a single SSL cert. So we have the SSL certs being generated all together. So it's like one cert that responds to all these names, but there's a limit of 100. And that renewal process didn't work. They like abandoned the Ubuntu gem a while ago. I don't know if they've ever picked it back up for maintenance, but it was like just abandoned because they didn't have anybody who was like a apt packager expert. And so that was like, okay, your official rules or your instructions are wrong. So I like moved to that, but then Python 3 became the default or whatever. And then certbot wasn't up to date for Python. And then I was like, at some point frustrated with all of that because it had like written the configs to renew, but it didn't include all of the details to fully renew the certs because that was one of the bugs with certbot. So I had all these people who were like, hey, SSL stopped working. And it's like, well, it turns out the software we use is bugged. And then the Python version issues came to be. And then I switched to acne.sh, which is just written in Bash, which is really easy to manage on any Linux server for the most part. But it's got its own painful little edge cases and things. And it's also Bash and hard to like debug and fix anything in it because it's not the best language to read and everything. So it has been probably the main frustrating piece of the whole puzzle because I couldn't find anything that was very reliable. So now we're on Caddy. It's freaking fast. All in Go. Super awesome. Hatchbox now has an API. So you in Jobboardly can go ping Hatchbox and say, hey, got a new customer. They're going to be using this custom domain. It'll add it to Caddy. Caddy then will, when the request comes in, the first request, when that DNS record is set, which Let's Encrypt needs to verify that, But now, instead of just running the script and hoping that the DNS record is set, the request will just come in and it will be correct automatically. And then Caddy will get the cert at the time, just in time, JIT. It JITs the SSL certs. And so it's like seamless and way easier for everyone. And I just can't say enough good things about Caddy. And there's an API that if you ever wanted to, you could just ping and get the config. You could modify it if you wanted. It'll probably get overridden if you were to do that. Hatchbox would go update it at some point and override your config, but we'll have a way to merge in your own configuration customizations like we did with Nginx, but it's sweet. I like Caddy a lot.
Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to bring up. I started using the Hashbox API to add custom domains when people set them in Jobboardly, and I don't know, it just works. It's cool. I wrote a little Hashbox wrapper I want to turn into a gem.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I want to make, a CLI and everything and have the ability to Alexa deploy Hatchbox or whatever. It'd be fun. That would be really fun, actually, make that a screencast. But yeah, I want to have a little CLI thing and stuff too, but just getting the version really, really solid, getting it launched. I even dropped the pricing for now. So it's instead of effectively the old version was $15 per server and now it's 10. Hopefully get old customers over and new customers can try it out and all that. It's just literally improved in almost every single way. Originally, the first version only assumed for one server, and then people wanted clusters, and that was bolted on. Then it was like, well, I got a coworker that I need to work with, so we added teams and bolted that on. The new version's all on Jumpstart Pro, so like we have accounts and invitations and connected GitHub and Bitbucket and DigitalOcean and all that stuff is really, really cleaned up, because it used to be looking always at the team owner's GitHub account. And now it's like you connect GitHub directly to the application, kind of like you would on Heroku. So we can go and say GitHub for this one and a different GitHub for this other app and so on. That is one thing I would like to go and adjust, is moving to GitHub apps and have the install process use that instead. But their documentation's like really unclear on the differences and what you can and can't do and just how to set them up. So I haven't fully gotten through that. I have like a branch somewhere, but for now it uses the OAuth process. And as we saw with the Heroku stuff, it was much better if you're on GitHub apps. So that's one of the next things for me to do on it. But yeah, it's exciting to finally be getting there, and hopefully much less support for me because things just work better and are more intuitive and all of that. So fingers crossed, but yeah.
I'm on board. I like it.
It's been fun. I mean, it's a freaking challenge to go build something like that. It is there's still things where like background jobs, I'll sometimes open Sidekick's dashboard and it's like, yeah, this person's deploy has been running for 4 days and it like stalled out somewhere, but the timeout code didn't catch it. And the SSH connection's still open or something. And something in there didn't properly catch the timeouts. The timeout Ruby library, you can find a post by Mike Perham and many other people that are like, just don't use that. So it's been interesting to like go through and learn those things and try and figure out how to make it all work and whatever. But, it is pretty reliable now. It's just like the rare situation that I run into with that.
I have one more question and one more lesson I learned before we wrap up. Now that Active Storage uses VIPs for image processing.
Yes.
I had to, in order to get it to run the analyze job on the worker, I had to add the Ruby VIPs gem to my gem file. I installed
image processing.
Yeah. Well, like that gem was already in there because it's just like came with Rails. I made sure like lib VIPs and whatever, like all the next like dependencies were there. And like I even looked at the gem file lock, and in image processing is like nested in there as Ruby VIPs, but it encountered an error. And the only way I get the error to go away was to bring that in. I read an article that like you had to do that for Heroku as well. And I'm just trying to figure out why. Maybe it doesn't get required or something because it's nested.
I don't know. Maybe you can show me an example Rails app that has that issue. I haven't noticed it,
I don't think it's a
haven't played
Hatchbox. I don't think it's a Hatchbox problem.
Yeah, but I'd be curious to see if you could make a very tiny app that has that. Yeah, I'm curious because I'm pretty sure I haven't ever had to do that. And so maybe it's a more recent issue that had brought that up. I don't know. Because, yeah, we install libvips automatically. I think we also install ImageMagick as well. Same thing with all that stuff. If we know that you are running Postgres, then we can also, well, we always just do it, install like the Postgres client and stuff so that those gems compile. Because one of the painful parts that you realize when you're dealing with Linux and stuff is like Sqlite. The officially supported version of Sqlite is version 337 on the brand new Ubuntu LTS. And unfortunately, that's one minor version before they added the arrow syntax. So like you can't reliably use the arrow syntax for JSON querying, which sucks. So there's a lot of those things where like, you want to use ImageMagick, the latest version? Well, I'm sorry, you got to compile it yourself. And so there's some of those things where like we have scripts that you can just run and have it go compile ImageMagick on your server or the latest FFmpeg or something. And I don't think we've copied all those over on the new Hatchbox yet, but we will have things like that. Actually, the one I have right here is Memcached one. So we'll have that actually built in as a database official thing you can just check a box for. But like you can use the scripts to just go SSH in for you and you don't have to do it yourself. And it's nice for us to be able to give you some official scripts that we'll maintain. And here's the latest FFmpeg, here's latest ImageMagick or whatever else that might require a little bit more manual work to set up and whatever. So it's nice to have those. You would end up putting that same thing in your Docker image or whatever anyways. Same kind of stuff, just running these things, compile the stuff, and then cache it, and you've got it. So it's a lot of DevOps work. It's a lot of interesting, fun things. Just the libvips thing, like Ruby's got to figure out where vips is on the system and then know where the executables are and maybe where the libraries are and compile a C extension to talk to those maybe. And it gets to be a lot of understanding your system and where it looks for the load paths for libraries and other stuff that like most of the time you just install the gem and like somebody else took care of that. The Raspberry Pi stuff I was doing was like, thank you, Tender Love. You've already written all this serial UART interface stuff that I don't really understand. And it's great to just grab those off the shelf. But when you got to work on them yourself, you're like, hey, this is a whole different world. And I'm glad I don't have to be there all the time.
So my lesson learned is if you use local disk storage for active storage and you put your worker on a different server, when it goes to analyze it, it's not going to find the file, which is, there were two options. Several options. Two options. One I thought about was using volume storage at DigitalOcean. So like just creating and that's just sim linking.
Yeah. And for anybody that doesn't know, that's kind of like almost, you can imagine having an external hard drive that you plug into both machines and they can see them together like a shared disk.
But that's how I ended up going to the Spaces route, where I was like, I'm just going to use active storage with the S3 compatible thing. And one nice thing, because I only need it for analyzing, really, it was like the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
But I didn't have to migrate all the local images because I didn't like delete them or like delete the configuration. So like the blob record still has the service as local. So it knows how to read the old images still without having to migrate them. And that's like,
oh yeah,
it's really a really nice little touch.
That's cool. I wonder if you were to move those over to S3 and just change the service name to like, or DigitalOcean Spaces, if you just change the service name, I wonder, I assume the keys are keyed off like the ID and model or whatever. So I would guess that it could just find them on the other service because they would probably have the same path, like the key. I believe the key is what they call it, but it's the path on the disk or the path inside your space or S3 bucket. And that's probably actually how it works because there's that mirror option that can be, we'll upload to Spaces and Google Drive or Google Cloud Storage and S3, and you can like mirror it all in different places for safety. Nothing like losing all your files.
Nothing like it.
Nothing.
All right.
Rush.
Andrew, you got anything to say?
Chris, you're so smart.
On that note,
See you later.
Bye.
later.